I think we just saw the best rare from the set during the Dragon Storms of Tarkir preview season. We've got a whole land cycle. Each one is a mono-coloured land that enters tapped unless you control the 2 land types of the adjacent colours within their pairings. So for example, on the red one is the Jeskai land, and thus if you have a Plains on island in play, this comes to play untapped. Each of them taps for their respective colour. In the case of the red one, it taps for red, and then each one has an activated ability that costs the colour of mana that it makes, essentially. So in the case of Kori Mountain Monastery, it's 4 mana, tap, exile top card of your library. To the end of your next turn, you may play that card. I want to talk about the whole cycle and why I think the blue one is easily the best, and probably one of the best rares in the set. If you're looking to pre-order anything from Dragonstorm in North America, you can do so at coolstuffinc.com. Use the code KENOBI at checkout to get 5% off your order, and it helps to support the show. And if you're in Europe, you can do that at magicmadhouse.co.uk. Use the on-screen code NOW to get 5% off your order, and it helps support the show. And again, you can pre-order from there, and they sell a huge range of stuff, from Magic to Warhammer to Lorcana to Pokemon. Let's go through all 5 of them, and I'm going to talk about the blue one last. I think it is by far the best. Now, importantly, none of them have a sorcery speed restriction on them. They're all instant speeds. They're all good in decks where you can hold up mana. The other thing that I want to say about the entire cycle is that they're all kind of free. So in the instances of Commander, for example, this is just a land that makes one of your color sources that will probably come into play untapped most of the time, thanks to you fetching Shocks, Triomes, or Original Duels, or whatever you're playing, and thus it's kind of free. And what I mean by kind of free is that when you put a colorless land into your deck, like let's just say Beseiju for a moment, which will come up more later in the video, there is a cost to this. It doesn't tap for any color of mana and thus can screw you on colors, and it ETBs tapped no matter what you do unless you're playing like an amulet or similar, and thus it is a downside. There is a cost to playing this. It slows you down and messes up your colors. Meanwhile, all of these cards do not slow you down or mess up your colors in good circumstances, and in the worst possible flaw, they are a tapped colored source still that has an extra ability. And when I say, again, free, the extra ability costs mana, but there's a small, if not zero, opportunity cost for including it in your deck. You play it as a land, and sometimes you never ever use it, but in a game where you are top decking, you're out of resources, your hand is stripped, or you're just struggling to get back in, these lands give you a way to dump mana in your opponent's end step before you untap to be able to do things whilst holding up interaction or just being hell-bent or having a dead hand. With that in mind, let's look at the red one again. So it's 4 mana untap, exile top card of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play that card. It is impulsive draw, and importantly, it's not impulsive draw to the end of turn. It's that new space in red that's been there for a while now, so I don't know why I'm calling it new, where you can pop it in your opponent's end step, untap, and have access to that card. And thus you can hold out removal, counter magic, bearing in mind that Kori's Mountain Monastery does play well with islands and similar, and then you can access that ability if you need to. Another important point about the inclusion of these in Commander is that they say Plains and Island on them, for example, with the Kori Mountain Monastery, but it doesn't stop you playing this in a mono-red deck. I'm going to be very clear about that. The only thing that stops you playing this in a mono-red deck is if it had another mana symbol on it. This does not. And thus, much like off-color fetches, you can play these in any decks. And thus, I think they're all quite reasonable includes for any Commander deck, because they're, again, basically free in terms of deck building and opportunity cost. This is one of the weaker ones in the cycle, I think, for Commander, although again, if you're just doing nothing and you do this in someone's end step to get an extra card and untap with it, in Prosper, for example, or the red-green thing that makes wolves, that's a pretty solid include. So I might be being too harsh on this. Absolutely solid card for mono-red Commander decks. Constructed play, I see it seeing a bit of play if there is a red control deck that might want some temporary access to cards by not using this interaction and tapping this in the opponent's end step, then it could see some play in Standard. But I don't think beyond that it's going to see much play in constructed formats other than Commander. The green one might just be the weakest, perhaps. Maybe that's unfair. They've all got such a high floor of just being a land that does extra stuff that I think they might be deceptively good. In this case, this is the green one that cares about you having islands and swamps, and for 4 mana you can surveil too. So you look at the top 2 cards of your library and you can put them back on top in any order or into your graveyard, and thus you can enable graveyard strategies and fix your draws. Now, surveil 2 on a land has seen play before. Castle Vantress is a land that entered the battlefield unless you had another island tapped, made blue, and for 4 mana tap, scry 2. So it is exactly the same thing, except in this case you're surveilling in green and you have more opportunities for it to enter untapped. And Castle Vantress saw quite a bit of play in Standard. I think it's even a fringe playable, like, the Pioneer mana-based places for like control decks and similar, because again, you hold up your mana and you get to do some scrying, card selection, and end step. Now, of course, green is less likely to want to do things at instant speed, but there are green flash decks. They have existed in the past in Standard and in Pioneer, and could exist again. And it plays well with blue because of the Island Clause, and Surveil puts things in your bin for Graveyard, Delirium, Delve, and other powerful strategies. So again, I think deceptively powerful. Is it better than Vantress, which currently sees like next to zero play in Eternal formats? Maybe. I'll probably say yes. Again, more of a commander card on the lower end of the cycle. The white one is super interesting. It cares about swamps and mountains for its untapped clause, and it's 3 mana tap. Whenever you attack this turn, create 2 1/1 red warrior creature tokens that are taps attacking and sacrifice them at the beginning of the next end step. It's the mobilization keyworded ability that you see on Mardu cards in this set. And it makes red warriors too, which is kind of interesting. Again, you can play this in a mono white deck because the color identity rule in Commander does not care about the color of the tokens that are made, nor what land types are mentioned on the card. The reason this is interesting is because there aren't that many white lands that actually make tokens, contrary to what you'd believe or think. Most of them are uncommon, they come into play tapped, they sacrifice themselves to make the tokens, and thus just aren't very good. The closest comparison to this is another card from Throne of Eldraine, which is Castle Ardenvale, which is 4 mana tap, create a 1/1 white human creature token. Now, there's a few reasons they're quite significantly different. So Castle Ardenvale makes a white human, which is probably more relevant across more formats thanks to, like, you know, humans being a very powerful creature type. And it costs 4 mana plus itself, so 5 mana total, 5 lands total to do it, where Dalkovan Encampment is only 4. The important point is that Dalkovan Encampment makes double the amount, but they're temporary. So in essence, Castle Ardenvale is a control and mid-range card that was good in its time in Standard. Meanwhile, Dalkovan Encampment is an aggro card that, because it costs 4 mana to dump into it, it's probably more comparable to like Den of the Bugbear, and it's far less aggressive. I guess it's in white, so different styles of aggro decks might play this, but ultimately I think this is significantly weaker than it looks, simply because it's just not a Den of the Bugbear, and it's not a Castle Ardenvale in both either the aggressive side on the former or in the like control side on the latter. Not the hottest one in the cycle, probably the worst actually, now I've really unpacked it openly and vocally and read out my notes. Great Arishan City is easily the second best of the cycle because the 5th one is absolutely bonkers. So Great Arishan City is most comparable to Moorland Haunt. Moorland Haunt was a standard staple, which was a colorless land that for blue and white tap, exile a creature card from your graveyard, put a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying onto the battlefield. That's right, it's exactly the same text, even down to the color, except this is less restrictive on what colors you need. You don't need a blue and a white to do it, you just need a black and any other color, and this taps for colored mana. So with Moorland Haunt being a absolutely reasonable card included in your like mid-range, even your, I think even like some aggro decks played it just to like reuse the creatures in their bin to put more bodies on board. I think Great Arishan City is just, the floor is an untapped black source, so I guess the floor is a tapped black source. The ceiling is just recursion, and by recursion I mean reusing the cards you've already played, getting free 1/1s here and there, and they stick around for blocking, attacking, and similar, making it actually more similar to Ardenvale than the white one. Because of Moorland Haunt being a playable card in Standard when it first came around, I think Arishan City will see quite a bit of play. And then we get to Mistrise Village, which might be worse in Standard than the black one, but it's going to be better in every other format than all the others combined. This is the blue one, it cares about mountains and forests, and it has 1 blue mana tap. The next spell you cast this turn can't be countered. So in essence, it has the cheapest activated ability and perhaps the most relevant across more formats. I mentioned Boseiju earlier because it's the most direct and obvious comparison. Boseiju still carries a $12 price tag because it sees a little bit of eternal play and is a commander staple. Boseiju currently sees play in Omnitel and Sneak and Show in Legacy, and it sees play in Calibrated Blast and Through the Breach in Modern, and then other fringe decks too. Now, the important thing about Boseiju comparatively to this is that Boseiju doesn't slow you down. Mistrise Village does say that you need to tap it and another blue mana to give your spell uncounterable. So there is a difference here. One is much faster than the other. However, Boseiju is slower in the sense that it comes to play tapped, so you aren't using the turn you play it, where Mistrise Village in Eternal formats where you have access to mountain and forest lands will 100% come into play untapped the vast majority of the time. So actually that speed difference is actually minimized. You do need to get to 5 mana to cast an uncounterable 3 mana spell with Mistrise Village, where you only need to get to 3 mana to do that with Boseiju. Boseiju costs you life, and it only makes colorless mana, to point out the obvious things. But that means that Mistrise Village can be in your main deck, in your mana base, for again, 0 opportunity cost. Meanwhile, Beside You Who Shelters All does cost you life when you tap it to make mana for other things that aren't your combo turn. So just like resolving mana rocks or other spells means you are taking damage, and thus your matchup against aggressive decks is much, much worse because you have a double pain land in your mana base. For that reason, Beside You Who Shelters All just shows up in sideboards. The breach decks that are doing well right now, there's a 8-2 list from Charlotte in the modern RCQ, plays 2 Beside You in the sideboard and none in the main deck. Meanwhile, you cut 1 Chivalry for an island and you can play one of these in your main deck. Now, the interesting thing is that, like, this isn't fetchable or anything, but also it's not legendary. So actually, you can play these in multiples if you want to. You can play 4 copies of this in your deck if the effect is good enough to warrant it without being punished, where Beside You is bad when drawn in multiples, and thus you can't play multiple of them. And further to all of that, Mistral Village does say that you can use it on anything. It makes blue mana, or it makes any kind of spell uncountable. Creatures, artifacts, enchantments, whatever. Meanwhile, Beside You again is only for instants and sorceries. And thus, Mistral Village, it's not power crept. Like I said, there is that slowness element of needing to pay 2 extra lands to do a thing, but it is... the utility is so powerful for a card that can be freely played. Place where this sees the most play, or will see the most play, is high-powered EDH, or just EDH in general. I say high-powered initially because a lot of low-powered formats, a lot of people aren't going to want to pay 2 extra mana just in case someone's got a counterspell at the table. However, at high-powered CDH, when you want your Ad Nauseam to resolve, or maybe Ad Nauseam's a bad choice because that's 5 mana, it'd be 7 to get there, I don't know, but your Underworld Breach to resolve or similar, Mistrise Village is incredible, because it just gives you access to counter magic that you don't have in hand. Now, there is this argument that having a counter spell is better in the sense that if you cast a Haymaker, a bomb, a combo piece, and someone goes to counter it and you stop them from countering with another effect, you've got a card out of an opponent's hand. Meanwhile, Mistrise Village just says, nah, you're not going to do that at all, are you? So I get it, but ultimately, I still think that the floor is so unbelievably just, I guess, high that there's no opportunity cost. The other comparison is Cavern of Souls. Cavern of Souls is an incredibly expensive card that sees huge amounts of play. Now, the reason I don't think Mistrise Village is a mistake or broken is the comparison to Cavern of Souls. Cavern of Souls fixes your mana for the creature type that you play it on, and then it makes that creature uncounterable, and it comes to play untapped at all times, and thus is a $40 card on average. But Cavern of Souls does have a downside in the sense that it doesn't allow you to cast your colored spells, and it does mess up your mana if you're not a creature-based deck, and yeah, Mistrise Village won't do that. And again, there's the speed element. Cavern of Souls is untapped, and it allows you to play things on curve when Mistrise Village asks you to play off curve to get the benefit of being uncounterable. And thus, I don't think it's going to get to the omnipresence of Cavern of Souls, because Cavern of Souls does 2 things. 1, it makes your spells uncounterable into control decks when you're playing creature decks, which is incredible. But B, it also makes your mana just very solid and consistent. You'll see 3, 4, and 5 color like typal decks in older formats play Cavern alongside all the worst versions of it that don't give the uncounterable thing, and just play all sorts of fucking creatures in their creature type and just forgo playing coloured spells. Mistrise Village won't be played like that because it doesn't do that. It doesn't have that extra utility of fixing your mana. But again, Mistrise Village doesn't really give a fuck if you aren't using it. It's just an untapped blue source. So I don't think this is quite the next Cavern of Souls, but it is not far off. I'm expecting this to be a $20 rare easily. Maybe it'll come down as the set gets opened in mass. If the set is as popular as it looks like it's going to be, people are very excited for this. And then over time, I just think this will be a Commander staple and see, I don't want to say fringe, but see like some tier 2 play in Modern and Legacy. Mistrise Village is very, very good, and I'm looking forward to finding out whether I'm right or I'm wrong. What do you think? Is it the best of the cycle? Am I being too low on Dalgovan Encampment? Am I being too high on Great Arishan City? You let me know in the comment section below. And if you want to talk about these cards in more detail, you can always join my Discord via the link to Patreon down below. For just £2 a month, you can help support the show and get involved with spoiler season and conversing about this stuff over there too. I've been Vince, also known as PleasantKenobi on the internet. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all soon. Ta-ta for now.